Okay, so this is another episode of Brooklyn in 2010s, a podcast based on what I saw and experienced living and visiting Brooklyn from around 2009 to 2019. I talk about major trends, phenomenons, issues that were going on in Brooklyn during that decade. So I had a couple of episodes that focused on Williamsburg in the 2010s. I kind of laid out the demographics in Williamsburg at that time as I saw them. To reiterate, Williamsburg is a neighborhood in the northern part of Brooklyn that was the focus of a lot of attention during the decade, especially because of the influx of artists, rapid development, and then it became a front line in a lot of the issues about gentrification, and probably became the most quote unquote gentrified neighborhood in Brooklyn during the decade. But so here's another interesting thing about that is that within all this rapid development that was going on, which saw an influx of people from all around the world moving to Williamsburg, especially the north side of Williamsburg around McCarran Park, bordering Greenpoint, and up through the south side streets, right in the middle, right in Williamsburg itself, in the same neighborhood, was this very traditional, very religious community of Jewish people that are sometimes called ultra Orthodox, sometimes called the Hasidic Jewish people. And they lived right in this same neighborhood as what were really very secular people that had moved into Williamsburg during the decade. So you have what you could say was very liberal, very secular, very modern people moving to Williamsburg just nonstop throughout the 2000s and into the 2010s, just this rapid influx of people moving in. And a lot of professional, first it was artists, as I've mentioned before, or artistically creative types, and then followed by a professional class of people. I would say mostly white, but not always racially. And people very much in touch with the modern world, but then in the same place were people very much in many ways living apart from the modern world, and we'll generally call them the Hasidic Jewish people. And I believe actually that most of them that lived in Williamsburg were groups of Hasidic Jewish people that were much more traditional factions. That what I'm saying is that among the Hasidic Jewish community, which is a very orthodox and traditional community, these people were particularly traditional and religious. Okay? So, like I said, the north side was the scene of this rapid development, and especially on the waterfront, near the waterfront, and into what had been like the Hispanic sections of Williamsburg, the Italian sections of Williamsburg, going into Graham Avenue, South 2nd, South 3rd Street. There was a lot of this gentrification that was going on, new buildings, towers going up, very modern towers. And then bordering this, when you get to the south side streets, like I would say around South 8th or so, up to South 10th, and then going down Williamsburg towards Bedford-Stuyvesant, south, in other words, south on Bedford Avenue, which is a main avenue in Williamsburg, kind of like the main thoroughfare. There's this Hasidic Jewish community, and you'll know it very fast, okay, because they look completely different from the creative types, professional class in Williamsburg, the Hispanic community, and what's left of the Italian community. And you'll notice this very fast because they still wear their traditional clothes. Okay? So with the women, you will see universally ankle-length skirts. They will wear long-sleeve shirts, and they have long hair. And I believe the married women always wear a wig, which is interesting. I heard that they shave their heads and wear wigs, which look very realistic. Often, a lot of times, you wouldn't even think it. And the men typically wear black clothes and a black hat. Sometimes it's a fur hat. Sometimes it's a wide-brimmed hat, and they when it's cold, they wear long black jackets, sometimes vests underneath, and they usually have beards. So you start noticing the areas where they inhabit very fast, and this different clothing is worn by adults, by children. It's very noticeable. So when you start to get into the areas where they live, it's not like a dramatic cutoff. Like, okay, this is Hispanic Williamsburg, this is secular Williamsburg, and then here's Hasidic Williamsburg. It's kind of mixed at some point. Like, I remember there's a complex near the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway. I believe it's called the Taylor White Houses. It's some kind of subsidized housing. I don't think it's what you would call a housing project or public housing, but it's some kind of subsidized housing. It's a big complex of buildings, residential buildings. And I was delivering pizza there, and it's actually mixed. Like, in these towers, you have the Hasidic Jewish people in their clothing, and there's also what seems to be a lot of Hispanic, maybe Puerto Rican people living there in the same buildings. And so you'll hear Spanish, and then you'll also hear Yiddish, which is the language that the Hasidic people there spoke primarily. Okay, so let me also make a point of saying that these people, from what I believe, are mostly born in America. They are not immigrants, yet they continue to speak this other language called Yiddish as their first language. And I would hear even children speaking it. And it was, of course, spoken by the adults. Now, they all spoke English. I remember once I had to ask, got a little lost in the Taylor White complex, and I asked a child, like, what was the building that, for directions to the building I needed to get to, and she went straight from Yiddish to English. There was no problem at all. So, that's another real interesting aspect of this community, that they continued to speak a different language as their first language, and it's written in Hebrew, and you will see flyers for it. You will see stores with signs in this language, especially as you get to really the heart of their community, which, as you go south in Williamsburg, you'll start to see more and more. So you travel south down Kent or Wythe and Bedford Avenues, kind of these main roads in Williamsburg, and their community, the Hasidic community, becomes more and more prevalent, and you see more and more of them, less of other people, and you see more of the businesses with advertising in Yiddish. Although I would say actually most of the storefronts continue to advertise in English, the majority at least. So this, especially Lee Avenue, as I mentioned in another episode, that's kind of like a main, shopping area for them. You don't really see many other people there. This continues kind of where Williamsburg meets Bed-Stuy, and actually if you go down Williamsburg's Broadway, you'll get to a point where you actually see a mix of Hasidic people, Hispanics, blacks, kind of like where Bushwick, Bed-Stuy, and Williamsburg converge. So that's kind of a place where you'll see these communities interact. And then also now throughout the 2010s, you would see also a lot of the newer people in that area too. So you kind of have a confluence of all these different communities, especially in that area, like Broadway, kind of around Woodhull Hospital, which is a big hospital in that area. You'll see all these communities just kind of walking around together. That's where they're located. That's what it looks like. Like I said, it's very distinctive, based especially on their clothing. So you know them when you see them, and I'm sure you can Google it if you want to see more of what they look like. So I didn't have a lot of interactions with this community or these people. I had a few, sometimes through work, clients that I worked for. So I didn't have any friends in the community, things like, and I think mostly they keep to themselves. I mean, from what I saw, they are living a traditional lifestyle. People, I believe they have arranged marriages still to this day, and people, get married, have kids. They do have a reputation for having a lot of children. I don't know exactly how true this is. For sure, there were times where I saw families with quite a few children. And they definitely are kind of like woven into the business landscape of that part of Brooklyn. I would see them sometimes like at construction sites, like not making the buildings, not like as the construction workers, but like kind of like in those trailers where the people who are supervising it are located. So they seem to be involved in some of the construction projects that were going on. And in the industrial areas, I would see that they owned some businesses there. I think some of the lumber yards, things like that. So they had quite a few small businesses that I would see in the area. So, like I said, kind of woven into the fabric there. And they would employ other people who were outside of the community. I remember once I was approached by a few of them to work on some projects. So they would have own businesses, but often, from what I saw, employed people from outside of the community. And um, so that's that's just wanted to kind of mention that whereas Williamsburg probably was where I saw the most change in the decade. And I've talked about this change that happened, rapid development, change in demographics, and probably nowhere was it more pronounced than in Williamsburg. Yet you would have right in this, there's this thriving community that is completely different, that has been there a long time. It doesn't look like it's going away either, despite all the changes that were happening. Uh, Whereas you kind of felt like with other communities, like the Italian community in Williamsburg, there was a feeling like it was dying out. And in Greenpoint, I definitely saw the Polish character of the neighborhood in decline. So yeah, you have a lot of this, the old mixed in with the new in Brooklyn during the decade, and this is just a really great example of it. So let me know if you have any questions or comments, if there's any other topics you want me to discuss. There's more I could say about this. Yeah, leave it in the comments, and I'll get back to you. So this has been another episode. Hit the like button if you liked it, and help support the channel. Thanks.